Hello everyone, and welcome to this video tutorial on how to install Archivesspace 4 on a Debian 11 server. My name's Jeremiah. I'm the systems librarian at Eastern Oregon University, and I like to make videos on how to install open source software and systems that might be helpful to libraries. Before we jump into the process, I do want to point out that I'm using VirtualBox to create virtual machines. So I have a virtual desktop environment here, which is what I like to use when I'm doing this kind of work rather than a program like Putty. And I also have this Archivesspace server running. It has no desktop, it's just your bare bones server. I have instructions on how to set these sorts of things up on my channel. I will link to two videos. One's for Debian 11, which is the Debian GNOME, and the others for Debian 10. I think they would still work with something like Debian 12, so they should give you a good idea of how to build both of these sorts of things. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that, and here is my Debian GNOME desktop. First thing I'm going to do is open Firefox and a terminal. We're going to need both of these. So with the terminal, I'm going to SSH into my Archivesspace server. So I'm just going to drag my servers window into the box here. So this is what it looks like. This is my virtual machine that I'm going to install Archivesspace on. But I want to SSH into this. And to do that, I need the IP address. So what I'm going to do is run the command ipaddr. And that's going to give me the URL that I need. So it's down here. I can't point on it. This is one of the reasons why I like to use my desktop environment rather than trying to do it with just the server interface. You're very limited in what you can do. So around this area here, if you follow my cursor, that line, you'll see 10.3.20.132. That is the IP address of this server. This is what I need to SSH into. Okay, and so this opened up a previous session, and I just want to start from the beginning. So let's just go to google.com and pretend like we're starting from the beginning. Okay, so in my terminal here, I want to SSH into the Archivesspace server that I'm going to build things out on. So I can do that with SSH jkellogg. So jkellogg is the name of my user. You'll see here kind of near the prompt, jkellogg. That is my Linux user for that server. So I need to use that and then the @ symbol, and then we need to put in the IP address. So that's 10.3.20. What was it? 132. 132. Okay, we'll type in yes, and we'll type in our password for the server itself. This is to connect to the server that I'm going to install Archivesspace on, so it's the password for that jkellogg user. Okay, so I am now in the Archivesspace server. What we need to do now is get our instructions. So the best way to do that is just do a search for Archivesspace install. Should get us where we want. So you'll see that there is this getting started with Archivesspace link. I'm going to go ahead and click that. It'll bring us to this page, and if we scroll just a little bit, you'll see the downloading Archivesspace section here. You can learn more about installing Archivesspace. This is what you want to click on. And then we just want to go to this Get Started link with installation. So we'll click on that. Okay, so we are being told that there are two ways to get Archivesspace up and running. One is using Docker, which is not what we'll be using in this tutorial. Perhaps I will try that in a different one. Apparently this is the recommended way, and apparently it's easier. My experience with Docker has been that it's not always easier, so I'll spend some time to see if I can get that up and running. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to install using the Zip distribution. We have a few system requirements listed down here. So we are using Linux, here it's specific to Ubuntu, but I'm using Debian, which is what Ubuntu is based off of. So if it works on Debian, it should work on Ubuntu. Memory, you don't need a ton, so you're going to need maybe 2 gigabytes of RAM for optimal performance. There are some software requirements. We're going to come back to these as we're installing things. So we're going to need to install Java, we're going to need to install Solr, and we're going to need to install a database. Here it talks about MySQL is the recommended thing, which no, it shouldn't be. Mariadb is the better choice. This is what we're going to be using. However, they do say that there's not a whole lot of support for it. If it works in MySQL, it's likely going to work in MariaDB. So we're just going to use MariaDB and not worry about installing MySQL. You can't do that through the apt repository, whereas MariaDB you can. What we're going to do though is we'll come back and take a look at these things as we're installing things. Okay, we'll come down here to the section on getting started. So the quickest way to get Archivesspace up and running is to download the latest distribution zip from the following URL. So that's what we'll do. We will go to this link. We are currently at version 4, so the latest version. We just want to go through these release notes and scroll all the way down to the bottom to where it says assets, and you'll see this Archivesspace v4.0.0.zip. This is what we want. This is the URL we want. I'm not going to download it directly here because I am on a desktop computer. What I would like to do is just download or upload this directly to the server. So the way I'm going to do that is to right click on it and then come here to copy link, and then we need to get to our terminal. And what I'm going to do is I am currently in my home directory, which is where I want to download this because I won't have to use sudo, which would make it owned by root, and that's not what we want. We want it owned by our user. And so to do that, I'm going to use wget. Just type out wget, and then we can post that URL that we copied for the zip file. If I go ahead and hit enter, okay, after 5 to 10 seconds, it should be finished. I'm going to clear this, and then what I'm going to do is list the contents of this directory. So I'm going to do that with the ls command, which is the list command. You can give it the parameter -la. I forget what those stand for exactly, but it's going to show you more information. So it's going to show you who owns it and what sorts of octal permissions are on the directories and files here. So I'll hit enter, and you'll see we have our Archivesspace zip file here. You can see that it is owned by my jKellogg user, which is important. We want that. Next thing we need to do is extract this. I don't have zip installed on this server. It's pretty bare bones, so I'm going to go ahead and install that now with sudo apt install zip, and that should be pretty quick. Okay, now that I've installed zip, I can actually use it. So I will do the ls command again, just to make sure I get the right file. So we have the Archivesspace zip file. We're going to extract it with the command unzip. And then if you just type arc, and then if you hit tab, it's going to autocomplete for you. So that's going to be an important trick as we're going through this. I use tab a lot, so you're going to see things get populated pretty fast. So we have unzip the Archivesspace zip file. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, once that is all extracted, if I do the ls command once again, actually let's do clear and then ls, you'll see now we have this directory here, and actually we want to make sure I own it. So ls-la, and I do. Everything looks good there. So now what we need to do is move this directory into a better spot. I don't want this in my home directory for the jKellogg user. I want to place it somewhere a little more traditional. And to do that, I'm going to use the sudo command because I'm going to put it in a directory that is owned by root. However, when we move this directory, the jKellogg user will still retain all the ownership for the Archivesspace directory. So we're going to move this to a more traditional directory with sudo mv for move, and then /usr, and then local, and then what is it, share, and that should be good. And actually what I need to do is come back here. So after the mv command, we want to make sure we do a dot / and then Archivesspace. So this is the directory that we're moving. This is the location we're moving it to. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Now if I do ls, you'll see that the Archivesspace directory is no longer there. What we are going to do is come and check this directory, and we can change directories with cd and then /user local share, and then if I do ls-la, you'll see that we have our Archivesspace directory owned by J. Kellogg. This is exactly where we want to be. Okay, let's go back to our instructions. Go back to the getting started. Okay, so we have downloaded our release. We've extracted it. It's in the right directory. It has the right owner. Next thing we need to do is start our Java configurations. So in order to do that, they're telling us that we can run this command here, java-version. Let's do that. Java-version. So the Java command is not found. So that means we're going to need to install Java onto this server. And if we go back to our software requirements, so we are using Archivesspace version 4, which means we need to use OpenJDK version 11 or 17. So Java Development Kit, I think, is what JDK stands for. So it configures everything on your server to be able to run Java. Now I'm using Debian 11. Debian 12 at this point is probably the most recent version of Debian, but the same command should work in both environments. This should also work in Ubuntu. So what we want to do is we're going to use the apt repository to install this. And we'll do that with sudo apt install, and then if you do default -jdk. So what this is going to do is it's going to get the default Java Developer Kit for Debian 11. If I go ahead and hit enter, and Y for yes. Now this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the video and wait for it to finish. Okay, so once it's finished installing, I'm just going to go ahead and clear this. And now I can do java-version once again. And now you'll see that we have version 11.0.26, which is exactly what we need, 11 or 17. So we're in good shape there. All right, let's scroll back down. Okay, so we've just installed Java. And now we will work on getting MySQL set up, installed, and all that. And actually, we're using Mariadb, as I said before. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow these instructions here. Let's just open this up. I'm going to right-click on this MySQL link and open in a new tab. And come over here. All right, so the very first thing I'm going to need to do, I think, is install Mariadb on my server. So I'm going to come back here to my terminal. We can do this with the apt repository quite easily. So we'll do sudo apt install mariadb-server. Okay, once that has installed, let's just clean that up a bit. So we've installed Mariadb. We have our database software now. Next thing we need to do is download the MySQL connector. And so even though it says MySQL connector, it's still going to work with Mariadb. Mariadb is built off of MySQL. So sometimes there's little differences that cause problems, but I don't think that'll be the case for Archivesspace. So what they're telling us is we need to add this into the Archivesspace library. So it's telling us we need to change directories into lib. What they're talking about is the lib directory in the root directory of Archivesspace. So that's actually user local shares, and then we'll cd into Archivesspace. We'll do ls to list the contents. and you'll see that there is a directory here called lib. That's where we want to be. We're going to cd into lib, and next what we're going to do is we're going to use this command here. However, I need curl installed, so I'm going to do sudo apt install curl. Y for yes. Okay, let's clear our screen. All right, so we have this command here that they're telling us we need to run. And actually what I'm going to do is, first we need to know what version of MySQL connector we need to use. So here you'll see that they're using 8.0.33. Note that the version of MySQL connector may be different by the time you read this. Essentially what we need to do is find out what version we can use here. Now each version is kind of specific to different Debian distributions, as you're about to see. So that's what we need to do. And in order to figure out what version we need to go to this MySQL connector for Java link. I'm going to right click on that and open in a new tab. It's going to bring us to this page. And if I select Debian as my operating system, it has an entry for Debian 12, but I'm using Debian 11. So I need to figure out what version to use for Debian 11. You can do that in the archives here. So if I just go ahead and select Debian Linux, we see that 9.2 is for Linux 12, or Debian 12, 9.1, also 12, 9, also 12, 8.4. We have some success here, Debian Linux 11. This is what we're after. So the product version we need is 8.4.0, and we're going to need to remember that, because we're going to have to change it here in this command. And I am going to copy and paste this because that is a very long command and I don't want to type it out. And I'm copying it because if I use this, it actually gets the cd lib too, and it's weird, doesn't work well. So I'm just going to manually copy this, minimize that. Let's go back to our terminal. Okay, so I am in the right directory. You want to make sure you're in user local share archivesspace lib. And now we're going to paste that URL in there. And remember, I need 8.4.0. So I'm going to change that in these two spots. Okay, and then over here, that's 0. That's 4. All right, now I can hit enter. And if I do ls-la, you'll see that there is MySQL connector. It is owned by J. Kellogg. That's exactly what we want. Okay, let's see. So we have done MySQL connector. Next, they want us to set up our MySQL database. Default character UTF-8. This is all accounted for in the code that they give us. We're not using AWS. We don't have to worry about that. All right, so the command they give us to get into MySQL isn't going to work in this case because we're using Mariadb. And the way to get into Mariadb as root would be as follows. I'm going to clear that. It would be sudo Mariadb. Your sudo user can actually log in to Mariadb as root. So this is all you need. You can just hit enter. And now they give us all of the commands that we need to run, all of the MySQL commands we need to run. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So we've got create database, Archivesspace, default character set, UTF-8 MB4. All right, this is exactly what we need. This is this is just what you would run to create a new database called Archivesspace, and that database is going to have a default character set of UTF-8. So go ahead and copy that. We can paste it, and make sure you get the semicolon here too, because it won't run if you don't put that in there. We'll hit enter. Okay, and now if I do show databases, you'll see that Archivesspace is in there. All right, Now that we've created the database, we need to create the user. I'm going to skip down here to the MySQL 8 plus version. I think this is the way that it should be done. So we're going to copy this command. This is how we create the user. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. Now I kind of do things, I'm a creature of habit, and I need things to be the way I normally do them. And typically, when I have a user for a specific database, I call it that database name underscore user. So the database name is Archivesspace. And you want to make sure you get this right, because Archivesspace user is what I'm going to call this. And then the identified by, so this is the password that they're looking for. Oh, let's see. Yikes. All right. I opened things up and made it weird. Sorry about that. Okay. Archives space user identified by. Oh, geez. Okay. Swear I'll get it this time. Paste. Hitting too many buttons. All right. Archives underscore archives space underscore user. Sorry, this is probably confusing. Identified by password. Okay, so what you see here is we're creating a user called Archivesspace user at localhost. This is where our server lives. This is where our Mariadb database lives. Identified by password. So that's just setting the password for this user. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Okay. Now I want to test to make, well, let's see. Am I there yet? No, we need to grant privileges first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this grant all privileges command. We'll paste it in here. So grant all privileges on archivesspace dot asterisk. So basically what this is saying is the asterisk is all tables within the database called Archivesspace. 2, you want to put in your user here. So I'm going to do archivesspace underscore user at localhost. All of this lives on the localhost server. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. All right. And at this point, I just want to make sure everything's good. I'm going to exit. And what I can do here is I can do Mariadb. Let's make that bigger. Mariadb -u for user, and we're going to do archives space underscore user -p for password. It's going to ask for the Archivesspace user's password, so I'm going to put that in here. Okay, I was able to log in with those credentials. That means everything is good here. I'm going to do exit, and we are back in our terminal. All right, let's minimize that a bit. We've granted all privileges. Get that bigger. All right, so we've just done that. Now we need to modify your config.rb file to refer to your MySQL database. Okay, so what they're talking about is the config directory in the root directory of Archivesspace. Okay, that's this directory here. Now to go back to that, we can do cd // and that takes us back here. And if I do ls, you'll see that the config directory is right there. We're going to cd into that right after I clear things out. So cd into config. If I do ls, you'll see that the config.rb file is there. We can edit it with sudo nano. Nano is a text editor. Config.rb. All right, so they're saying that we need this app config db URL, which is right here. We don't even need to search it out. What I'm going to do is come down here. I'm going to uncomment that, which is very important. You need to take out that pound sign. Um, Now I'm going to delete everything up to the equal sign there, and then I'm going to copy everything here past the equal sign. Copy that, paste that there. Now we do need to edit this a little bit. We're going to need to change the user, so let's get that bigger. All right, so under user, I'm not using AS as user. I'm using archives space underscore user. So this is the Mariadb user that we just created and that person's password. So password is what I used for that password. All right, you need to edit those. So if you made a database user and used a different name than the defaults, like I did, you're going to need to change these things. All right, now we can do Control X, which gets us out of there. We can do Y to save, and then we just hit enter. We don't want to change the name of the file. All right, so we should have that. That should be good to go. Now, we've done that. All right, there is a database setup script that will create all the tables that Archivesspace requires. You can run this with this. All right, so it's once again, we're going back to the Archivesspace root directory. So I'm going to do cd .. /. Now if I do ls, you will see this directory called scripts. That's where we're going next. So we'll cd into scripts. And now if I do ls, you'll see that there's this database, setup database.sh. This is what we're after. This here is for Windows. This here is for Debian Linux. And we can run that easily with a period and a / and then se and then tab, and then make sure you put in sh. So setup-database.sh. This should set up all of our tables within the Archivesspace database. Go ahead and hit enter. And this will take a while, so I am going to pause as it does its thing. Okay, now all of our tables are set up. The script has stopped running. I'm going to come back to our instructions. So we've just run that. Now we can follow the instructions and getting started. So we've done all of the MySQL setups. I'm just going to close out these windows. We're back to getting started. And now what we need to do is install Solr. So I'm going to right click on that and open a new tab. And we'll come over here, and so the Solr requirement notes, you'll see that for version 4 of Archivesspace, we need the external Solr version 9.4.1 or something similar. I'm going to hit this back button. So we know what the requirement is. Now we need to install Solr. And what they're doing is giving us a link to the Solr documentation. Let's go ahead and right click on that and open in a new tab. And once we're here, we can go to this download button. All right, and the most recent version is 9.8.1. Now I'm not fully sure if there's a way to do this with wget or with curl. I'm sure there is, but I don't really know it off the top of my head. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to download this. You'll see for Solr 9.8.1, there's this binary release. And what I want to do is click on the Solr-9.8.1.tgz. I don't want to do any of these other ones. This is the one I want specifically. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, and now what I can do is check to make sure it is in my downloads folder. That is what we're going to need to do. So yeah, I've got the Solr 9.8.1.tgz. I have that here. So now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to use the skip command to grab this file from my development machine, from my desktop, and put it on the server. I think I'll close that out. And what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to change directories to my home directory, so cd dash or cd tilde. And so this is going to get me to my home jkellogg folder. And I'm going to download, or actually I'm going to upload the file I just downloaded to my home directory. What I need to do is I'm going to come over here and open a new terminal. And so when I open that new terminal, I'm in my development environment. This is the desktop machine where my downloaded Solr file is. And if I go to cd downloads in ls, you'll see that this is what I'm after here. I also need the IP address for the skip command. So if I run the IP adder, I see that my IP is 10.3.20.26. So I'm going to use this to upload the file I just downloaded to this desktop machine to the Archivesspace server. We can do that with, so here is, I'm in Archivesspace, I'm in the Archivesspace server. I'm going to run the command scp skip. For my user, you'll see it's jkellogg, jkellogg at. Then we need the IP address. So we got 10.3.20. What was it? 26. Okay, and then a colon, and then forward slash. And actually, what I'm going to do, I'm just in my desktop. I'm going to run this pwd command. And what I'm going to do is just copy that. So after the colon, I want to paste what I just copied there. Now we need the file name. So I'm just going to copy that. Come here. And so we want to do a forward slash and then paste that. And then enter. Oh, whoops. I need to, after all of that, I'm going to need to do a dot forward slash for current directory. So that means just install it in the directory I'm in now, which is my home-jkellogg folder. Hit enter. Yes. So the password I'm being asked for here is for my desktop machine. I'm currently in the Archivesspace server. So I'm gonna put in that password. I think I may have already, but I'll just redo that. All right, and so now if I do ls, you'll see that we have this Solr-9.8.1.tgz. Okay, now I'm going to do a similar thing with this that I did with the Archivesspace zip directory. I'm going to move it to a place that's a little more traditional, but first we need to extract it. It's a tar file, so we're going to do that with the command tar. Whoops, make sure my cursor's there. tar, and then dash xzvf. I don't remember what they all stand for, but I think X is extract, V is verbose, I forget what Z is, I forget what F is too. And then the Solr, and then I'm just going to hit tab, Solr-9.8.1.tgz, that should extract everything here in my home folder. Okay, now if I do ls, you'll see that we have the Solr directory here. Now I'm going to move it to a more traditional place. And again, this is something that you will need to own. Your user will need to own this. So if we do lsla, you'll see that the jkellogg user owns it. So that's good. Now what we're going to do is move this to a more traditional spot on the server. And in our case, that will be the opt directory, which is in the root directory of Linux, and it's for optional, I believe. And basically, it's just software that really doesn't depend on anything, and so that's where we're going to put Solr. All right, I think we're going to need to use sudo mv, and then I think maybe we're going to need to do a /Solr. Yep. Okay, and now we need to tell it where to move it to, which is opt, and I'm going to rename Solr-981 to just Solr. So I'm just going to type Solr here, and that should change the name from Solr-981 to just Solr. Hit enter. Now let's cd to the opt directory. We'll do ls-la, and you'll see that we have our Solr directory, and it is owned by the right user. We should be good there. Okay, moving on. All right, I don't think I need the desktop terminal open anymore, so I'm gonna close that, and then we're just gonna use the Archivesspace server at this point. All right, so we have installed Solr. I think we can close this. All right, so we installed Solr. Next, what we need to do is create a config set. And so this link is going to tell you a little bit more about config sets. I'm not going to go over it because it gets, I don't know, it's hard to explain, I guess. I think it would make things more confusing if I try to explain it. So we're just going to go ahead and create the config set. And it's showing us how to do it here. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is do that. And so it's telling us we need to make this path. And of course, it has a path variable. So path to Solr, that's not actually what we want. The path to Solr is actually, we put it in the opt directory. So actually, in my case, this is exactly where Solr is installed for me. So what I'm going to do is just copy this and then paste it here and then hit enter. And so now, if I do cd serve, let's see, Solr server Solr config sets Archivesspace conf, you'll see that we're there. And right now there's nothing in here. We're about to put some stuff in there. Okay, so we've made this directory. We're not doing Windows. We can just come down here. So it says we need to copy the config files to this conf directory. So all of this here, we're going to put these 4 files into this directory. And they live in the Archivesspace directory. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd to, let's see, user local share Archivesspace. So this is our root directory for Archivesspace. I'm going to hit enter and then ls, and you'll see that there is this Solr directory here. Let's cd into that. ls. Okay, so as you can see, these are the files that we're going to need to copy to that directory that we just made up here. And we can do that with, let's see, we can do, and I think my user owns both, so we don't have to use sudo. All right, so the command for that would be cp, and then I'm going to do a period and / and then an asterisk. So basically what's that says is, in this current directory of Solr, we want to copy everything in here. So that's these 4 things right here. And we want to copy them to the opt Solr server Solr config sets Archivesspace conf. All right, now I'm just going to hit the up arrow and it's going to give me my last command that I just ran. And now I just actually want to cd into there. And if I do ls, you'll see that we now have all of the files in the proper directory path. Okay, we should be good there. All right, let's minimize that. All right, copy the archive space, Solr configure. So you'll see this is exactly what we've done. All right, and the next thing we need to do is set up the global environment variable. So there's a couple ways of doing that. Let's see, I'm going to do this. And let's see, let's clear that. And I think what I'm going to do is just cd to my home directory to make things a little nicer to look at. We need to set this here specifically, the Solr modules. I'm going to hit this copy button, so I'm going to copy that. One way of getting that set is to do the command export and then paste that in, so the Solr modules equal analysis-extra. I'm going to hit enter. Now if I do echo Solr underscore modules, it should do the analysis extras. So that's good. Now, if we want to make this permanent so that you don't have to do this every time you come into the server, there is a way to do that. And we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to cd into the etc directory, so /etc, do ls, and you will see that, let's see, environment. There is this environment file right here. We're going to edit this. And we'll do that with sudo nano environment. All right, and then I'm just going to paste that directive here. So now every time you start up, it's just going to automatically assign Solr modules the analysis extras, which is what you want. It's just going to make life easier. Now if I do Control X and Y for yes. Now if we hadn't run the export command, if we hadn't run the export command, we're going to have to source this environment file in order to actually make that variable take. So, and you would just do that with the command source and then environment, and then that should be good. So we should be good to go there. All right, and this is kind of telling us how to set environment variables for different operating systems. So, you know, it'll kind of have those instructions here if you click on that, what we just did. All right, so we have the config set in place. It says we can start Solr at this point. I don't actually think you can, because every time I follow the instructions in this order, it doesn't work. So what we need to do is actually make sure the Solr URL is set in your config.rb file. So the same place we did the database stuff. All right. So we can get there if we do cd for change directory and then user local share Archivesspace ls cd into config, because that is where that file is, and ls, yes, we're in the right place. So I'm going to do sudo nano config.rb. All right, and now if I do Control W, I can search, and I think what we're looking for is solr underscore URL. Yes, and so that takes us here. And in this case, it's really just a matter of uncommenting. I don't think we need to do anything else. Let's just look at the instructions. So http://localhost 8983 Solr Archivesspace. We're good. That's good. We don't need to do anything else here. Let's do Control X to get out of there, Y to save, and then enter. Okay. All right. Now that we've done that, now I think it's safe to come back and start Solr. And so we have to do that in the bin directory of the Solr root directory. So that's in the opt directory. So let's do that. We got cd opt Solr bin. All right. And if I ls things here, you'll see that we have the Solr command. And to run that, we can do period forward slash Solr, Solr, and then start. Okay, and after a little bit, you should see this message right here. All right, so we've started Solr. Now, if you come down here, it says you can check that Solr is running on localhost 8983. This is the port number. That's not actually going to be the case. And honestly, even if we did the IP address, that's not going to work either. So, for example, 10.3.20. This is 128, right? Oh, geez, I've already forgotten what the address is. 132. 20.132. And then if I do 8983, we're not going to be able to get there, which is a good thing. We're actually able to connect from localhost. We're not actually able to connect from the IP. If you want to connect from the IP, which you should not do in a production environment, you can do that, and it might actually make installation a little bit easier too. If I do the ls command here, you'll see that there is this solr.in.sh script. It's a bash script. We can edit that so that it will actually allow others, anything other than localhost to come here. So do that with sudo nano solr.in.sh. Okay. All right, and what we need to do is find the Solr Jetty host. So I'm just going to do Control W, and I'm just going to put in Solr_Jetty, and that brings us here to the Solr Jetty host. And right now it's configured, so the default is just to run on localhost. It won't run on anything else. Comment that out, or take out the comment. And if we just make this into 0.0.0.0, Control X, Y, okay, and then if I do .solr restart, oh, that's right, you can't tab for that. So period forward slash Solr restart, hit enter. Okay, now that it's restarted, this should allow us to see the Solr interface. So you can see everything's up and running. Okay, now let's see, we're still on Solr, right? We just started Solr. Next thing we need to do is create the Archivesspace core. So we can do that with period forward slash Solr, and then create -c Archivesspace -d Archivesspace. So this command right here is what I'm doing. Go ahead and hit enter. All right, so the new core has been created. And let's see, do we have anything else? We did that before everything else. All right, I think we have everything in order here. I'm gonna just make this bigger. Okay, we can take that out. We don't need to set up Solr anymore. We just did the Solr setup. All right, so now we should be ready to start Archivesspace. So they're telling us we need to change directories to the Archivesspace root directory, which again is cd user local share Archivesspace. Okay, so we're in the root directory of Archivesspace. If I do ls, you'll see that we have this archivesspace.sh script that we can run, and we do that with /archivesspace.sh. If I hit enter, this should begin configuring everything and setting everything up. I'll just pause until it's done. Okay, so at some point you're going to get a message that says welcome to Archivesspace. Now this is running in the forefront, so if you close this window or if you do Control C, it's going to stop everything. So you would stop access to Archivesspace. So what we're going to do is 10.3.20.132 is the server. And then it says here port 8080. So port 8080. All right, so we put in the IP, a colon, and then the port, which is 8080, and enter. And there we go. We have Archivesspace. And now they say in the instructions here that username and password is admin and admin. So we can go ahead and just admin, admin, and we are now logged in to DSpace or Archivesspace. So there are various places to go, different ports that you can use to check out things. Really, the only two that you're really going to need are these two. I don't know what 8089 does. Let's see what that does. 8089, just some database information. That must be database backend. Not sure. You do want to make sure that 8081 is running, so let's try that one as well. 8081. Okay, so this is the front end of it. This is where your users are going to come and check things out. 8082, let's just give that. That's the OAI PMH. Okay, that looks good actually, even though we didn't give it a parameter, so that's why it's giving us that. And then this Solr admin cons, I don't know why 8090 they have here. That's not accurate. That should be 8983. Maybe there's some kind of setting that I'm not familiar with or something I missed, but Solr's typically on 8983. Okay, I think that does it. That kind of sets it all up. You should be good to go at that point. I'm not really sure how to use the interface. I know the back end. I just don't know. I don't know how to use the web interface. So that's up to you to kind of figure out. There's probably other YouTube videos on that. But of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to help if I can. Sometimes I get way too busy and just don't have the time to look into these things. But if I do have the time, I will answer comments, emails. Emails probably a better approach to get in touch with me. But in any case, if you find this video helpful, please give it a like, a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if open source library stuff is your thing. And I hope to see you in future videos.